For many centuries, a prophecy forgotten in the shadows of history has regained momentum every time a pope dies. Today, with the conclave in progress and the world watching closely the selection of the next leader of the Catholic Church, ancient manuscripts, mystical visions, and apocalyptic warnings resurface with intensity. Among them, one in particular has caused unease not only among the faithful, but also among scholars and curious minds: the prophecy of Saint Malachy. According to reports, it describes with striking accuracy a list of all the popes who would lead the Church from the author's century until the end of time. And according to the count, the next pope would be the last, the final figure before a great tribulation. It is said that the prophecy was written by the Irish monk Malachy in the 12th century, after a mystical experience in Rome. He allegedly received visions of all the future popes, describing them with brief symbolic phrases in Latin. For centuries, this manuscript remained hidden in the Vatican secret archives, only being revealed in the 16th century. Since then, each new pope has been compared to Malachy's text, and the most intriguing part is that many titles seem to match with startling accuracy to their respective pontificates. Pope John Paul II was called De Labor Solis, the one of the labor of the sun. Pope Benedict XVI received the title Gloria Olivi, the glory of the olive, and the current pope, Francis, according to this list, would be the penultimate. The next, named Petrus Romanus, or Peter the Roman, would be the one to face the collapse of the faith and the final persecutions. But what would this mysterious figure of Peter the Roman truly mean? The prophecy offers few details, just enough to fuel speculations. Some believe that he will not literally be someone with that name, but will represent a kind of return to the Church's origins, to the figure of Peter, the first pope. Others think he will come from Rome, with stronger ties to Catholic traditionalism. And there are those who see this character as a spiritual leader during a time of chaos, wars, and global transformations. For the more skeptical, all of this is just coincidence and medieval superstition. For those who believe, it is a solemn warning of what is to come. The current moment, with the death of Pope Francis and the Church gathered in conclave, seems to align with a sense of transition and the end of an era. The world is polarized, the Christian faith is being challenged in various parts of the globe, and even within the Vatican, there are visible divisions. Amidst all this, the emergence of a new pope arouses curiosity but also fear. Is the prophecy being fulfilled before our eyes? Are we about to witness the selection of the last pontiff? If we are truly on the brink of witnessing fulfillment of the prophecy of Saint Malachy, we must understand that this event carries a much greater significance than merely a transition of religious leadership. It would, in the prophetic view, be the harbinger of an era of global trials. And it is not only Malachy who points to this. Other visions throughout the centuries, such as those of St. Faustina, Our Lady of Fatima, and the Revelations of La Salette, also describe a time when the Church would face both internal and external persecution, and when the flock of Christ would be severely tested. A time when doctrinal confusion would arise, divisions within the clergy, and the advancement of forces attempting to erase God's presence from the world. The possible emergence of Peter the Roman in this scenario could symbolize not only the final spiritual resistance, but also a time of decision for all of humanity. He would be the last shepherd before the great judgment, according to the interpretation of many scholars of prophecy. However, it is important to remember that these messages are not meant to cause panic, but to awaken us. The purpose of prophecies has always been to lead to conversion, vigilance, and a return to God. In this context, the figure of the last pope is not necessarily one of condemnation, but a hope, a leader who, even in the midst of the storm, will keep the light of true faith burning. The current situation is especially sensitive. Wars, moral crises, extreme climate changes, technological advances that challenge ethical boundaries, and a growing spiritual indifference mark our time. The Church, in turn, faces pressures to adapt to the modern world, often at the expense of its roots. In light of this, the new pope may be confronted with decisions that will not only mark the history of the Church, but of civilization itself. The choice made in the conclave will not merely be between cardinals, but will reflect a spiritual direction for all of humanity. Therefore, it is not an exaggeration to say that the world is watching this decisive moment with great attention. And many in silence are asking themselves, could this be the last pope? Are we entering the final stretch of history as we know it? Or perhaps this prophecy has been misinterpreted, and there are many chapters still to come? Regardless of the answer, one thing is certain. We are facing a rare, sacred, and profoundly symbolic moment. In this time of uncertainties and expectations, it is worth remembering that the history of the Church has always been marked by highs and lows, persecutions and renaissances, heresies and reforms, falls and ascensions. From the times of the apostles to the medieval papacies, from the councils that defined the dogmas to moments of internal crisis, the Christian faith has survived not because of human strength, but because of a divine calling. Thus, in the face of the possibility that we may be witnessing a prophecy being fulfilled before our eyes, the question we must ask is not just who will be the next pope, but how should we prepare? If the prophecy of Saint Malachy proves to be true, and we are indeed facing the last shepherd of the Church, then this will be a time of spiritual vigilance like never before. It is necessary for each faithful person to awaken to the responsibility of being light in the world. We can no longer live as if everything were guaranteed, as if time were infinite. Every day may contain within it the call to draw closer to God, abandoning vices, mending broken relationships, returning to prayer, fasting, and the Word. The new pope, whoever he may be, will need to carry an immense spiritual burden. He will face not only the internal challenges of a church divided by ideologies and interpretations, but also the pressure of a world increasingly hostile to the Christian faith. His steps will be watched, his decisions questioned, and his posture may either ignite the flame of hope or deepen spiritual confusion. Therefore, more than ever, the world needs to pray for this man, for his holiness, courage, and wisdom. But there is something even deeper in all of this. The figure of the Pope, especially if he is truly the last of prophecy, could represent the convergence of all eras. The past, with its martyrs and saints, the present, with its pains and challenges, and the future, still shrouded in mystery. A future that, according to many, may culminate in great revelations, supernatural manifestations, judgment, and redemption. Perhaps, after this last shepherd, there will come a time when there will be no more structure, only faith. A time of purification, of harvest, where the wheat will be separated from the tares. In this context, what remains for each of us is to remain steadfast, not in human predictions, nor in fears fueled by news or speculations, but in the living faith in Christ. Because in the end, it will not be Vatican politics or the secrets of ancient archives that determine the course of the world, but rather the response of each heart to the divine call. And as the world awaits the announcement of the new pontiff, many are looking to the sky for signs. Some say that the emergence of a pope from an unexpected region, or one with a radically different stance, could be the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. Others believe that the next spiritual leader will be the one who, amid moral darkness and growing persecution, will keep the flame of true faith burning. In both cases, the spiritual atmosphere is charged. It is not just about the succession of a religious leader, but about a possible shift in the course of human history. In recent decades, the global scenario has been preparing for something greater. Technology, globalization, political, and climate crises. Everything seems to be pushing the world toward a climax. And within this scenario, the figure of the Pope has always held a central role, even among those who do not follow the Catholic faith. After all, the Pope does not only represent a religion, but carries with him the symbol of an established spiritual order of a millennial tradition. If this cycle is coming to an end, then what comes after? Various prophecies, not just that of Saint Malachy, point to a time of great spiritual tribulation before the return of Christ. Ancient prophets, visionaries, and saints from different eras have mentioned a leader who would face the forces of evil in their most intense form. A shepherd who would have to guide his flock through a time of darkness, where faith will be tested like never before. Many believe that this time has already begun, and that the next pope will be this prophetic figure. Meanwhile, the faithful around the world are being called to awaken. There is no more time for lukewarm or superficial faith. It is time to dive into the Scriptures, understand the signs of the times, and remain vigilant, not out of fear, but out of preparation. Jesus said that no one knows the day or the hour, but he also said that the signs would precede his coming. Perhaps we are living through these signs now. The conclave continues. The cardinals pray and vote. But outside the walls of the Vatican, there is a growing silent expectation. The Church is living through one of the most important moments in its recent history, a time when every step, every word, and every decision could echo for centuries. And perhaps, just perhaps, this is the moment when ancient prophecies will cease to be merely texts and will become reality before our eyes. If the ancient prophecies are correct, then this is not just about the choice of a new religious leader, but about the emergence of a key figure in a much larger spiritual plan. The papal transition could be the trigger for events that have long been predicted. And as the conclave unfolds, the words of Revelation seem to echo more forcefully. False prophets will arise, wars, famine, and persecution. For many, this is no longer a distant scenario, but a portrait of the present. The next pope may face a divided church, a world in turmoil, and a scenario where faith and reason are in constant collision. Some believe he will be a reformer. Others fear he will be a leader who aligns with the powers of the world. But there are still those who hope for someone of profound spirituality, who will revive hearts and call the faithful to repentance and hope. And while the white smoke has not yet risen, there is a sense in the air that something greater is happening behind the scenes of history. The sky watches, the earth waits, and time seems to be accelerating. The next pope will not just be a man in white robes. He will be a sign, a milestone, perhaps the last, perhaps the most important. We do not know, but while the doors of the Sistine Chapel remain closed and the bells are silent, we are invited to reflect on our beliefs on the state of the world and on the role of each of us in this moment. Perhaps we are not just spectators of a new chapter, but active participants in the story that is being fulfilled. Because, in the end, every prophecy has a purpose, to prepare hearts for what is to come.